What's up, Acadiana, and welcome to Offsides. I'm Shannon Wilkerson here with Brandon Comeaux. Thanks for joining us for today's broadcast. It is 4:05. We will be with you until 6 o'clock on this kind of cooler, breezier Tuesday than we've been used to. Actually, when I was leaving to come over here, I was walking to my car, and I had this unusual breeze, okay? And there was this cloud cover, so I wasn't closing my eyes. You know how it gets so glary? You're walking across a big, bright parking lot, and the glare coming off of the parking lot is so hard on your eyes. I was able to open my eyes completely while I was walking to my vehicle, and I wasn't sweating by the time I got there. And when I got into my vehicle, when I opened the door, I wasn't hit with a blast of sauna heat that is normally what is inside my vehicle, as well as everybody else, because of the heat. So it's not so bad today.
That's because you're experiencing the cold front that it's making its way through Louisiana. It's supposed to be here for the next couple of days. It's going to bring a lot of rain, and the like you said, the heat won't be as sweltering. Yeah.
Well, I'm fine with that. Yeah. And if this is what we want, if this is what we have to call a cold front at the beginning of August, I'm fine with it.
You know, August getting off to a good start.
It is. That's exactly right. August is getting off to a good start. Maybe it's a sign of things to come. Yeah. Maybe August won't be that bad.
As long as the rain doesn't cause any flooding to start off our August, that's the issue.
Yes. Rain is good in moderation.
Yes.
Along with most things. But, give us some nice, cool rain that will take the temperature down on the concrete and all. And as many afternoons like this is fine because it's not actually raining.
No.
Okay.
It's just cloud cover all
It's just
day.
cloud cover. That's exactly right. And the humidity isn't so bad. So it's not so bad in South Louisiana today.
Not today.
Yeah. Well, give it time.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're going to be talking today 2 hours, 2 subjects, 2 hours about how whether or not the crowds, whether or not the masses and the protests have an influence over cities. And what we're talking about is what's going on right now in Philadelphia. Philadelphia is terminating its ICE contract. And the big story is the fact that, the feds need this information. And the Philadelphia has announced they're just not giving major information to ICE anymore. And several of the headlines read that they are bowing to intense pressure from activists and groups that have been protesting aggressively. There have been a lot of confrontations at the ICE entrance. There have been many arrests, big confrontations between protesters and local police. And so this is a very complicated situation, or rather it is turning into a complicated situation because now we've got cities, not only do we have sanctuary cities, which is a mess, but now we've got cities just basically saying, we're not giving the information and there's nothing you can do about it. The question is, how much can the feds do about it and how far are they willing to go to get it?
Well, and you know where they're going to have to go through, and it's the court system. And we've learned that with our courts, it just all depends on the judge. If the judge has a liberal bent to him, hey, he'll side with the mayor in Philadelphia, who is a Democrat mayor. But if the judge is someone that's gonna that may have a little bit more of a conservative leaning, or is someone that's going to interpret the Constitution as written and not as a living, breathing document, then chances are they'll go ahead and uphold law and order. And so that's what we're seeing here. Is a lot of this is going to end up going into the courts. And I just look at this, and I mean, there's some other examples that we'll talk about during the hour as well. I just see this, and I see you've got law enforcement on one side, and let's just be honest, you've got a lot of Democrats on the other side.
That's true.
That are opposing law enforcement officers. I mean, what has this party come to? Because, and I'm making it a partisan issue because Democrats are making this a partisan issue.
I agree with you. But I'll tell you, I came across some very surprising and interesting information today. And let me read this to you. Maybe we are not as divided as the media portrays us to be.
Okay.
In a recent Harvard-Harris poll,
right?
Okay, when they polled Democrats, it turns out that 59% of Democrats are opposed to abolishing ICE.
Yeah.
Okay. Also, 51% of Democrats are opposed to sanctuary cities.
Now, that doesn't surprise me, actually, because when I'm talking about Democrats, I'm talking about
the elected
party people.
That's exactly right. And I was just getting ready to say that.
Right,
There's a difference between the public and the people that the public have chosen to represent them,
right.
who they have elected. Now, there are basic, now we're getting into the legal thing, and that's what it's come down to. You're right. It's going to all come down to the judge, and then it is all going to come down to the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
Okay, because like we have discussed many times here on Offsides, this is all of these big issues are all going to land on the Supreme Court. Okay, what they ought to do is just bring it straight there to begin with and stop wasting time with all of the appeals courts and all of the state judges and so on. Now, there are two basic levels of the U.S. legal system: federal law, state law. We all know that. Federal law applies to the nation as a whole and to the 50 states. State laws affect only the state within that jurisdiction. Now, the law that applies to situations where state and federal laws disagree is called the Supremacy Clause. And the Supremacy Clause contains what's known as the doctrine of preemption, which says that federal government wins in the case of conflicting legislation. So it's like mom and dad, okay? Dad is like state law, and mom is like federal law. Okay, so if a child goes to the dad and says, hey, can I stay over at my friend's house tonight? And the dad says yes, but then the mom says no. Guess what's going to happen? Okay, so think of it that way. Dad is the state, mom is the feds.
Yes.
Okay, and so the point that I'm making, that I was mentioning before, is that why waste your time going to dad? Let's just go straight to mom and get the final answer, which is just like going to the Supreme Court and getting the final answer.
232-1542, 232-1542. The phone lines are open right now. See some people trying to get in, so let's go ahead and do that. Caller, you're on the Cajun Harley hotline. Go ahead.
Well, I tried to get y'all yesterday, but I was unable to. So I got y'all on the phone right now.
All right. You want to jump on this ICE topic?
Yeah, this ICE topic, I want to tell you something about what's going on in these countries down south of us. They're all in sort of a rebellion right now.
Yeah.
And it's not a communist versus, the old-time
communist
government
versus capitalist? Or
yeah, communist versus capitalist, or communist versus previous Mexican corrupt government, and all this, they're going to help the poor farmers. What we got right now is we have a revolt that's being funded by criminal behavior, and the people there's just super criminals that are down there that are running large parts of Mexico, and they're fighting against the Mexican state. They've let the MS-13 down. And we need to shut ourselves off of that gang. We need to close this country up from all this.
I agree with that.
Yeah, well, that brings up the whole immigration conversation and argument and the wall and all of everything underlying it. Now, one of the misconceptions, this is what bothers me a lot about this whole argument about ICE, and everybody that is protesting ICE, I believe, are very misinformed and naive, ignorant. And the reason is because whenever they are interviewed and they ask why are they protesting ICE, they always answer because of the separation of families. Okay, but ICE has nothing to do with that.
No.
Okay, that's customs and border control. So even if you eliminate ICE, you have not eliminated the issue of them separating families. Right. Now, we've talked about that as well, the whole separation of the family situation here. And that gets kind of complicated because nobody wants to see that happen. However, as President Trump has said, if these people don't want it to happen, don't try to cross the border illegally.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing about it, because when I think about ICE and they're trying to go in and look, are they squeaky clean? No, I'm sure not. You're going to find elements in every enforcement agency. But what they're trying to do is they're trying to root out illegal immigrants that are especially criminals. And so what's happening here is you have many of these Democrat leaders that are not only fighting for illegal immigrants that have not committed crimes, which I can almost understand that, but I don't agree with it, because what they're saying is, well, look, because there's some stories that are coming out that say, well, look, they don't want ICE agents to go in, and if they catch somebody who's an illegal immigrant that is a witness or is a victim in a crime, that they'll end up getting deported because they report that person. Okay, I can understand that, except for the fact that if they're not trying to become a legal citizen, then they are committing a crime. Yes. Okay, I get that, all right? But I can almost understand that layer of compassion. But what they're also doing here is they're going and they're sticking up for inmates.
Yes.
People that have not only violated the law by being here illegally, but they have done crimes within the country.
Yep.
And so a lot of these Democrat officials are going in and sticking up for these people as well, and taking up for the criminals against the people that are here to protect us and to protect our country.
Yeah,
it's ridiculous.
And they argue that they deserve their support simply because of the way they were arrested.
Yes.
Okay? That's their argument there. They think that because of the advantage that ICE has and the procedures that ICE has, that they should have never been arrested and put in jail in the first place, instead of focusing on the crime that they committed. And so I can't understand how any of them can justify this argument to support criminals that are illegals and criminals and in jail for committing a crime. How can you justify that? You can't even justify that in most cases in that they think that they'll be able to gain votes from them. They're not going to be able to vote.
But here's how they justify their position on that is, and I was reading a comment from an immigrant advocacy group, the head of that, where he said the city's decision will reduce the ability of ICE to disappear, to quote, to disappear our loved ones and tear apart families. So they're working on emotion.
That whole family thing. That's exactly right. Well, okay, here's what I would like to say to that point. My counterpoint would be, all right, these are criminals that they came across the border, they committed a crime, and they were separated from their family. All right? You don't like that. You don't think that they should be separated from their family, even though they've committed a crime that dictates that they should be. Well, what about the criminals that are already citizens here?
Yeah.
Okay, they get separated from their family.
Absolutely.
Okay, and so why don't you support them? Why don't you say that the people that have committed crimes and that are in the prison system here in our country should not be separated from their family? They get separated.
One would reason to think that is coming.
Yeah, it is coming. That's the next step.
Thank you, caller. 232-1542. All right, caller, you're on the air. Go ahead.
My concern with this is that if the Democrats believe that they can whine and cry and get their way with this one issue, where's it going to stop? If we bow down and allow them to basically break down our federal immigration laws by not abiding with reporting this information, where are they going to stop? What next? Is murder going to be something they're going to go after next? If you kill somebody, they're going to say, oh, we should just give them a second chance.
Yeah, it's a very good point. And in fact, I recently saw a video of a professor, a liberal college professor, that was making the argument that pedophiles that's actually a psychological disorder. Right. And we needed to understand that, and we needed to work with them. And they even came up with a more politically correct term for it. Yeah. I think it was called minor attractiveness.
Oh, my gosh.
And so where does it stop? It doesn't stop anywhere. They will never, ever stop. I would like to say to any of them, listen, fine, take this one state, California, all right? Make it a sanctuary state. Do it but you're not getting any help from us, all right? You can do your own thing over there. We're going to build a wall instead of across the Mexican border.
Right.
We're going to build a wall against across the California border and give them 3 years and see what California turns into.
Yeah. What I'm very interested here is coming with the midterms later this year. You know, how will the country look at all these policies that Democrats have been standing for? And look, man, I wish there was a lot better alternative than the Republicans. I'm not a fan of the Republican Party. That's why I'm independent. But I can't support the Democrats right now and all that they're backing up and this being one of them. I'm interested to see what's going to happen in November and December when you start having all these elections and the country has an opportunity to kind of flip it towards the Democrats and this so-called blue wave that's being talked about.
I don't know.
I think that wave is just turning into a little ripple.
I agree with you. I think that all of these issues, although they are important to many people, the huge majority of the people out there will vote for one reason, and that is their wallet. All right? And we've got economic growth at over 4%. I mean, the list of our economic improvement just since Trump took office is very impressive. And any Republican that is running right now that has the backing of Trump, all they got to do is run on that platform, because all of these social issues, although they're important, the majority of people, they only wonder about one thing, and that's their wallet.
Okay, now, and that's interesting, and I agree with what you're saying but I want to bring this up too. With all of this discussion here, let's think about this over the break. How much does safety have to play into how people are voting as well?
Yeah.
Law and order. 232-1542. We'll be right back. KPAL News time is 4:24. You're listening to Offsides. Brandon and Shannon, News Talk 96.5 KPAL, talking about, well, ICE and Philadelphia voting to stop giving ICE access to real-time arrest database. As a matter of fact, 2 of 3 stakeholders in the contract, the city, the district attorney, and the city courts, had to vote to end it. And so they're doing so. And so it's causing some interesting ripple effects throughout the country. We'll talk about a couple of cities, other cities, as we go throughout and how they're dealing with ICE and illegal immigration. But first, we posed a question before the break. And Shannon made an interesting point that people usually, when they go to the election, when they go to the booth, they vote with their wallets. And the GDP obviously is doing very well right now, 4.1% growth. It's growing at a very good rate right now. But I wonder. Well,
let me clarify that very specifically before you go on.
Okay.
They vote with their wallet first.
Okay, first.
Okay. I believe that's the main reason. It's not the only reason.
Yes.
But I think it's the most significant one.
It's the driving factor.
Yes, sir.
But with all of this discussion about ICE and how you have Democrats taking up for criminals, I mean, they're literally taking up for criminals that come across our borders. How does security come into the equation when people are going to the polls?
Yes. I think that safety is right after money. Mm-hmm. That's what I believe. Mm-hmm. I believe that people vote with their wallet first and they vote for safety second. I think that other social issues fall behind that.
Yeah.
And I believe that a lot of people that express their opinions, strong opinions about social issues, when that curtain closes behind them, I think that those issues take a back seat to money and safety.
232-1542. Let's get some callers involved. All right, caller, you are on the Cajun Harley Hotline. Go ahead.
Hey, how's it going? My name's Paul.
Good.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out who we should demonize. I think it was Harry Reid who said that he didn't want to talk about immigration law because it's easier for Donald Trump to go ahead and rule with a pen, basically. I think they got a little too used to Obama doing that, and rather than doing the job, which was what Trump was doing, was enforcing the law. That's what led to the separation to the family. And 1997 law, combined with the Flores consent decree from California, 6th District, does mean that they should be separated at the border because the parents are facing 6 months and or a $10,000 fine. And the Flores consent decree said you can't detain a child. So it was really Donald Trump's hands being tied if he's doing his job, which is enforcing the laws written by Congress. I just thought I'd throw my 2 cents in.
No, I mean, you make a good point. And I'll make this point just to add on to that. This was not law that was written or passed by the Trump administration.
Exactly. It goes back to 97, and then I think it was 2001 was the Flores consent decree.
Yeah, absolutely. And, today, as a matter of fact, ICE officials were questioned over family separations, and people in both parties really expressed their frustration. As a matter of fact, on the Republican side, Committee Chairman Charles Grassley said that President Trump's crackdown on people illegally crossing the border from Mexico was well-intentioned but had unintended consequences, and said the administration mishandled family separations.
Yeah.
And I don't take issue with him for saying that. I don't think that, I think the Trump administration was trying to do their best they could to first and foremost protect American citizens. Now, did it go smoothly in protect and keeping safe and in the execution of this with people that were coming into the country? No,
yes.
I would never try and argue that.
No, I agree
But I
with
think
you.
first and foremost, they were trying to keep the people in this country safe.
He wanted a zero-tolerance policy.
Yes.
All right, and I think that with that zero-tolerance policy, you have got to enforce the law as it's written 100%.
Right.
You can't be very subjective after you say we want a zero-tolerance policy.
Right.
However, I'll say this, that the illegal crossings is significantly down since they implemented that.
Absolutely.
Okay, so it does work. The zero-tolerance policy has brought results, and so. But then remember, Melania got involved.
Yeah.
Okay, and a lot of things changed once she stepped up.
Absolutely.
Thanks for the call.
Thank you, caller. All right, 232-1542. Caller, you're up. Go ahead.
I'm
always vote after is for freedom. You know, if there's an anti-gun candidate, I wouldn't vote for him. And I see a lot of voters in different states. They're voting to allow themselves to smoke certain items. You know, they go over there to the polls to vote for that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you mean. I have no idea how it has anything to do with what we're talking about.
But thank you, though.
Thank you for the call, all right? Call us back when you land.
232-1542, caller, you're up. Go ahead.
Yes, talking about the immigration issue.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, we're all pretty much immigrants. I mean, right?
Yeah, but we're all legal immigrants.
Right. So the illegal immigrants are basically misdemeanor. It's not a felony. It's a misdemeanor. Refugee coming to this country trying to get asylum is not really a crime. They're escaping violence.
Well, I'll tell you, I agree with you and I disagree with you. I agree with you when I have the opinion that if I was in their position, I'd be doing the same damn thing. All right? But I disagree with you when you said it's not a crime. It is a crime. We do have a law. You can't do that. You can't just come across and cross the border. You've got to go through the right procedure to come into the country. And they are bypassing that, and they are therefore breaking the law. And I believe after the third attempt, it is a felony.
And every time someone says we're a nation of immigrants, man, I get it. We are a nation of immigrants, but like Shannon said, they need to come through the right way. I am all for if someone's coming from another country that's innocent, they're oppressed, they're trying to get here, they're trying to do things the right way. Man, please come on in.
We need them.
And become a productive member of
Absolutely.
society.
We need them
Absolutely.
and we want them. Okay, ask any business owner right now how hard it is to hire people. We need people. We've got more jobs than we have people that want them.
Right.
And so I want many more legal immigrants to enter the country, but they got to do it the right way.
Yeah, and if you're looking to come in and avoid all the taxes that we have to pay as citizens, you get all the benefits that many of these citizens don't get, and we have to pay for all that.
Right.
I'm not for that at all.
Yeah, and there are legal citizens here that are not getting the benefits that they are entitled to because these programs are going broke because there are too many illegals getting the money. But if those illegals were legal and they were in here paying taxes, then they wouldn't be a strain on those programs.
Go ahead, caller.
Can I talk now? Do you let people talk?
All right, man, relax.
Dude,
go on.
Go ahead, man.
No, you haven't let me talk yet.
I'm letting you talk now. Go on.
Okay, well, let me explain this to you. Right now, I say I'm an independent voter. I'm almost 62 years old. Never joined a party because they're corrupt. You people join parties that are corrupt and enable that. What's happening is...
I love the you people thing.
Go on. Let him finish because he's going to be upset.
Voters are up to 43%.
He's not even listening anyway.
The Republicans are down to 25%.
What's 43? I didn't hear you. What's 43%?
It's a statistical fact.
Dude, he's just asking you to clarify
asking
what
you what
said.
the 43% was. I didn't hear you.
We outnumber you.
Who is we?
We outnumber. Now, the independents.
Oh, okay. Go on. All right, go on.
Now, you know who else is coming to vote? 74.5 million millennials who are tired of being shot in schools. You know who they like? Bernie Sanders. Y'all are in trouble. You're outnumbered.
All right. So you're a Bernie Sanders guy, right?
All right.
Look, he just hung up.
I know. See? Good luck, man. Get off the dope.
232. So if you're a Bernie Sanders guy, that means you're a socialist. That is basically what you are.
Now that is a good example right there of how aggressive some of the other, I mean, they are just really, really angry. And
I mean, I was looking forward to having the conversation.
I know. I would have liked to have gone back and forth.
We go back and forth, and then we go with the caller more, and he got all upset.
If we didn't want to let him talk, we would have just hung up.
Yep. All right, 232-1542, caller, you're up. Go ahead.
Hey, he called spouting all that nonsense on Carol's show earlier. But these Hondurans or wherever they're Nicaraguans that are coming through Mexico, once they arrive at the Mexican port, they're no longer under danger. Therefore, they have their asylum. Mexico's just sending their problem to us. It's not fair. It's against international law, and screw them. Thank y'all.
All right. Thank you.
All right. 232-1542. Caller, you're up. Go ahead.
Hey, please get that guy to call back that says you people again. I think he's off his meds.
That's what I was saying. I was trying to ask him who he was talking about when he said "you people," but he was too upset, yelling and screaming to understand anything we were saying to him.
Yep. Thank you, sir. All right, 232.
And to mention something that the previous caller said. Oh, wait, excuse me. Go on.
Okay. All right, let's get another phone call in here. All right, caller, you're on the Cajun Early Hotline. Go ahead.
Hey, guys. How's it going?
Good.
Hey, I'm the college student that's called in here a couple of times. And I got to say, the guy that was talking about millennials, I'm a millennial. And I'm the most conservative guy on the campus of ULL. You see, people say, oh, millennials are tired of getting shot in schools. I'm tired of not having the ability to stand up for ourselves. Well, that's what I'm tired of.
Well, all right, good for you, okay? And I appreciate, Brandon and I both appreciate you calling up because a lot of people, including us, all right, we all have the opinion that millennials all do behave and think the exact same way. But you are the exception. So there are some reasonable people in your demographic that are out there. And, it's too bad that we don't hear from more people like you.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know something? I'll never forget one thing my dad said to me. One thing he said to me was, if you're under 20 and not a Democrat, you don't have a heart. If you're over 40 and not a Republican, you don't have a brain.
Oh, wow. Pretty good.
And I'll never forget that. And it's just one of the things that I was like, sure, I'm the exception, but I have the ability to think for myself, and I have the ability. I've been a conservative ever since a guy named Jeremiah Wright went on national television saying God bleep America.
Yeah, right.
Ever since then, I've been a conservative. And honestly, I listen to stuff like this all the time, and ever since it came to Lafayette, I've been a fan of the show. I'm just really thankful you guys are some of the few ones that are actually speaking the truth.
Well, thank you,
we
sir.
appreciate you,
Appreciate
man.
that.
Thank you so much.
Keep calling in. Keep listening. We'll be right back here on Offsides. Welcome back to Offsides, everybody. Boy, it's been a heated, interesting hour so far. Let's get back to focus on what it is that we're talking about, okay? Because we've kind of branched off, and of course, because these kind of subjects have so many underlying issues that are really correlated with it, if not directly related. What we're talking about is how Philadelphia has now decided and agreed that they are no longer going to give ICE any of the material, any of the data that ICE usually gets from them. And so we've gotten a couple of phone calls from people, one wacky phone call and some other very good ones. So let's go back to the phone lines.
All right, caller, you're up. Go ahead.
Well, I can understand, being a libertarian constitutionalist, I believe in states' rights, so I don't think the federal government can force states to hand over that material. But that being said, the individual that called y'all before, his name is Paul. He's a flaming liberal. He's like that other guy, Mike, the one that's always calling y'all defending Obama, even though Obama's not in there. So I don't know why he's constantly defending, Obama to this day.
Yeah, good point.
But he gave plenty of statistics, and he gave, polls and so forth. But these are the same statistics and polls that said Hillary Clinton was going to win in 2016.
Good point. Yeah.
And we see what happened. Donald Trump won. So, you got to ignore all this stuff. This is stuff that's put out by the liberal media. So he's drinking the Kool-Aid because he's a liberal. And so, I say wait till the elections. Let's see what happens. And I don't believe the polls whatsoever.
All right.
Thank you, sir.
Good point. If there's one thing the Trump campaign and election did was taught us, don't necessarily pay attention to the polls.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to bring up another city as well, because kind of in this situation. So Orlando is a city right now that many people are looking at, and we're going to get back to the phone lines very momentarily when it comes to immigration. As a matter of fact, Orlando commissioners unanimously approved a resolution this week that would stop police from asking, quote, law-abiding people about their immigration status. So Orlando police are basically being told, hey, you cannot ask somebody about their immigration status going forward. Now, that has caused a lot of big headlines, a lot of a big uproar about it, because basically for over a year now, you've had 36 social justice organizations that make up what's called the Trust Orlando Coalition. They've been lobbying municipal officials to pass a policy that would ensure that illegal aliens would not be profiled or detained based on their citizenship status by the Orlando Police Department. So it's interesting that this is going on in Orlando as well. Now, the police say, look, we are not about, we're not in the position to go ahead and detain illegal immigrants, okay? But it's this thought out there that people are so concerned with protecting illegal immigrants more so than regular citizens.
Yeah, right. And you could apply the same argument. If you're going to accept that, if you're going to support that police cannot ask somebody about their about their citizenship, basically, then you could apply the same thing to whether or not they should be able to ask you for your driver's license.
Yeah.
Okay, so the same argument could be applied across the board. So I don't know. It's ridiculous. It's absurd. All of these cities that are taking these positions, as you just described, to support and protect illegal immigrants, I just can't see how they can get away with it. Sooner or later, there's got to be something that comes down that draws a line in the sand. And I don't mean an Obama line. No. All right. I mean a real line in the sand where these cities are going to be held accountable. They've got to be held accountable.
Yeah, and some of this on its base, like I said in the opening sentence, it sounds innocent enough, protecting law-abiding illegal immigrants. Well, I'm sorry, if they're illegal immigrants, they're already not law-abiding.
Yeah, don't be
so
sorry.
That's one strike.
Yeah.
Okay, but that's my frustration, is that you have all of these groups that are coming up that are so concerned with protecting that certain group of people and not the citizens themselves. And crime be damned.
That's
if it
right.
happens.
And as you recall, we opened the hour discussing how all these groups are so aggressive and so persistent that the local governments are cracking to them. Yeah. They're agreeing with them. So you're right. It's not the masses. It's these groups.
Yep. 232-1542. All right, caller, you're on the air. Go ahead.
Is this me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Hey, how you doing, guys?
Good.
Okay, so I got a couple of interesting little insights as far as the what you guys are talking about with the ICE and all. I mean, I'm pretty much in agreement with you on that stuff, and I believe it's related to what I wanted to make a little prediction here, and I actually read a Forbes article about it just recently, and. As a huge Trump supporter, somebody who knew he was going to win from the day he announced and wanted him to run back when Romney ran, I think Trump's a very, very tactical person. And I think that one way that Trump could really, really throw a monkey wrench into the Democrat Party and the future elections and the whole landscape, as well as fixing a lot of these issues with the border crossings, because a lot of people coming over here are not just illegals, but they're drug cartel people, and they're going into the national parks, they're growing marijuana, they're doing all kind of environmental damage. I think Trump is going to legalize marijuana, and I think it's going to be I just think he's going to do it. There's a Forbes article about it as well.
I think you're right. I think that he is going to legalize marijuana. I don't know that it's going to have any effect on immigration, though.
Well, it'll have an effect on the election, though, because he's going to get there's a huge marijuana.
You're right. All those millennials that the prior caller was commenting on are all going to all of a sudden become Trump supporters. Okay. I mean, if he makes that a deciding factor, I think that he's going to gain a lot of votes from that demographic.
I mean, it's a simple fact. More people are for legalization by a vast majority. So Trump is smart enough to know that. Like, why? My question is, why didn't Obama do it if he was so,
I'm
liberal
surprised.
Or whatever? I mean,
I'm surprised he didn't. I thought that was going to be part of his agenda. I really did.
I think Trump is going to freak out all the liberals and all the Democrats and do it. I really do. I really do.
You're right. He's very tactical. It wouldn't surprise me if he said, okay, we're going to legalize marijuana and free bicycles for everybody.
All right.
All right.
Thank you, caller. 232-1542. Caller, you're on the air. Go ahead.
Hi.
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 About the illegal immigration, a couple of things. One, being a teacher, I'd like to remind everybody that seems to have forgotten the definition of a prefix IL in front of something means not. So illegal means not legal versus legal immigration, which there are policies, and procedures to go through. And the second thing is there is a way to get in legally. They're called ports of entry. Mm-hmm. So all of these people that are going elsewhere are going around for a reason. They don't want to go through the legal ports of entry for some reason or another, which means we don't want them here if they can't.
Good point.
You know, it's like they forget to say that there is a way to do it that is legal. They're not bound to do it the illegal way, but some of them know that they can't get through the other way. You know?
And, you know, your explanation of illegal, that's why I hate when they have the term undocumented immigrants. All that is trying to take a true negative, which is illegal, and try and turn it into a positive.
That's right.
And
Undocumented.
It's a play on words.
Undocumented sounds like you forgot to fill out the paperwork.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, it's not undocumented. You're illegal.
And, you know, that's what liberals, that's one of their most successful tactics. It's called muddying the waters. We don't call things what they are anymore. We make it sound better. We make everything look better because the truth is going to, you know, show their true colors. And
that's like abortion, reproductive rights. I mean, they do that all the time.
Yeah, that's right. They come up with different terms, and that way it's able for them to build their base. They get more people to agree with them because they get a new title, and the new title is less aggressive in nature.
Exactly. It hides the truth.
It hides the truth. That's exactly right.
I mean, why come up with a new name unless you're trying to hide something?
You're right, man.
You're right.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for calling.
All right, we'll go ahead and take this quick commercial break. When we come back, we've got one more segment left in the 4 o'clock hour. You're listening to Offsides, Brandon and Shannon, News Talk 96.5 KPEL.
All right, everybody. That means Cajun Harley-Davidson. Cajun Harley-Davidson now has a new offer called Warranty Forever. Warranty Forever provides a lifetime limited powertrain warranty. This warranty is included in every new and pre-owned bike under 5 years old, and it is at no additional cost to the buyer.
Yes, as a matter of fact, Cajun Harley-Davidson is the only Harley-Davidson dealership in the state of Louisiana that has the Warranty Forever program. Regular maintenance is required, so go into Cajun Harley-Davidson and discuss the details with one of the incredible sales team members.
Yeah, okay, so back to the conversation. Boy, we've been really getting a lot of calls, a lot of opinions, and some really aggressive calls about the new deal that's going on in Philadelphia. Philadelphia does not want to, and they will not be giving any of their information about illegal immigrants to ICE. And it kind of brings up the whole eliminate ICE argument, and people want to get rid of ICE. And most of them, I believe, are misled, misinformed, and naive to the facts. But we've got a lot of calls come in, so let's go to the phone line.
All right, caller, you're on the air. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm going to draw a quick parallel of what's going on here. And it's like the 18-wheeler drivers, the long-haul drivers, they had to have those log books, and then the state troopers would stop them and whatnot. And a lot of companies that are bigger ones, they're going with GPS and electronic log books because they would just have a second set of books. The parallel I'm drawing is that behind all of those guys coming in over here and doing it illegally, they're doing it with a network. You don't just go to another country, show up in San Francisco, and you got a place to sleep that night and food to eat and people to go to work for the next day. My point is that not all of them, but there's staffing agencies here in America ran by wealthy white men, and they do the right thing. And then there's other ones that have two sets of books. One is that you want the legal guys, and the other one is you want that subdivision made. They have all the connections, and they are running this. If there wasn't any way for them to have a network to get to the job, they would not be here, point blank. So if you want to get rid of immigration, the problem we have, you got to get rid of the liberals that's making billions of dollars off of the slave and trafficked folks that are coming in across. They're being useful in a way, but not to us.
And I would venture to say that it's not just liberals that are making a profit off of it too. I do think this is something that happens on both sides of the aisle, if you will. I think there are also people that are of a Republican mindset that are benefiting from this as well.
Lots of people.
Yeah.
I mean, contractors.
Exactly.
There's a long list of people that are benefiting from illegals that are coming across the border.
Yeah.
Okay, if you can find somebody that's going to work harder, do more work for less money, and you can pay them cash, that does not only benefit the worker, that benefits the employer as well, because now that employer does not have to pay payroll tax on it.
Yeah. All I'm saying is the lobbyists, if you follow the money, here's where I can pretty much prove you wrong on it's everybody, like an umbrella thing. All of the legislation that has been gunned down whenever Republicans tried to enact laws and change things and make it one on the H-1 visas, it was always the Democratic vote that blocked it. And a lot of these Democrats actually own staffing agencies. So just do your homework, guys. You'll find out.
All right.
All right, thank you.
That's interesting.
Yeah, 232-1542. We go back to the Cajun Harley hotline. Caller, you're on the air. Go ahead.
Is it me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, hello.
Okay, sorry, it's just a little confusing to me. But on the immigration, I actually had a business in El Paso for 4 years, and the people coming over is not the problem. The problem is with our politicians, and blaming it on ICE for enforcing a law that is on the books is, I mean, let's get rid of the city police of Lafayette, because I don't agree with the 35-mile-an-hour speed limit on Camellia.
Oh, good point.
Yeah, that's a good parallel.
And driving down it this afternoon, I'd venture to say that 98% of us don't agree with that law. But we're not saying get rid of the police. What needs to be done is the laws that need to be addressed, and they're not being addressed because of the asshats up there in Washington. Just can't get off their behind and get anything done. So that's just my comment. You have to enforce.
Oh,
the
they can
laws.
get they can get things done when they're properly motivated.
Yeah,
they are more motivated to leave things the way they are most of the time because they've already obligated to donations.
Yeah, and I'll give you a slight example of that. Earlier today, the NFIP, the National Flood Insurance Program, got extended. Okay, well, it got extended for another 4 months. Today was the deadline, but they didn't schedule a vote in the Senate until later this week, which would have put a lot of people in trouble. You basically had to have Louisiana's senators get up there and say, look, guys, if y'all don't take action on this today, all of a sudden you're going to have a lot of people down in our home state of Louisiana that are going to be screwed. And all of a sudden they found the time to be able to move it up today.
Yeah,
it's ridiculous.
Well, all they need are better assistance and a better calendar.
Yeah, thank you, caller. All right, 232-1542. Caller, you're up. Go ahead.
Yeah, you do realize that many of these quote illegal aliens are here with papers legally working, paying taxes and everything, but they're not doing it under their own name. It's somebody else's name.
That's true.
Good point.
That's a very good point. And what happens is that sometimes there are several of them all here under the same name.
Yeah, that I don't know about. I mean, the companies that are hiring these people, they're technically not breaking any laws. These people got all the paperwork they're supposed to have. They're taking out taxes for them. They're they're paying all the regular insurance they would. So to say, I'm sure there are some companies that pay cash and get a great deal, but many of these individuals are getting good wages and going through all the proper procedures, just not for themselves, for somebody else.
Good points, caller.
Thank you.
We do have to leave it there because we got a news break coming up in just a few seconds. We'll be right back.
What's up, Acadiana, and welcome to Offsides. I'm Shannon Wilkerson here with Brandon Comeaux. Thanks for joining us for today's broadcast. It's 5:08. We'll be with you until 6 o'clock on a cooler than normal afternoon, Tuesday afternoon. Thanks for listening and tuning in today. We now will have we're going to have a pretty active hour moving forward in the 5 o'clock hour because what we're going to be talking about is what's going on in Austin, Texas, and how it is kind of parallel to many of the conversations that we had about things that had taken place in New Orleans and along with many other cities, especially throughout the South. Austin is considering to rename its city, because the name of the city has ties to slavery. One of the founders was Stephen F. Austin, and he was pro-slavery. And he was a very aggressive pro-slavery person, and he believed that the city, that slavery was a very important part of the success of the city. And so now they want to rename the city. They haven't said what they're going to rename it, but along with that, they want to change lots of street signs, lots of neighborhoods, what the neighborhoods are named. And like, for example, there's a neighborhood called Bolden Creek, which was named after a slave owner, Colonel James Bolden. The report of the list changing several street names like Dixie Drive, Confederate Avenue, Plantation Road. The cost of this can be almost $6 million just for the street change naming, or rather the street name changing. But the big story is that they want to name the entire name of the city. Now, this is very similar to what we have seen in the New Orleans area when we were talking about them removing the monuments, because one of the things that I was concerned about was whether or not they were going to change a lot of the street names there. There are a lot of street names all over New Orleans that have ties to slavery. And so now Austin wants to at least consider making these changes. I believe that this has a very likelihood of happening, because Austin is a very, very liberal city, very progressive in many ways. And I think that this is going to gain and continue to gain traction.
Well, here's the thing about that, though, is that basically for them to be able to change the name of the city, it's going to have to go to a vote of the people, at least from what I've read, which is why it could take a while. And there were a lot of people in Austin, as liberal as it is, there were a lot of people that were upset about the name changes on the streets. You know, you had a couple of streets that were named. As a matter of fact, Robert E. Lee Road became Ozzie Morton Road, and Jeff Davis Avenue became William Holland Avenue. So basically, the city gathered input from the residents along those streets. A majority of them opposed the changes, but they happened anyway. So basically, government brought in these people, said, okay, well, this is what you have to say, but we're going to do it anyway because we know what's best.
Well, that's what happened in New Orleans.
Yeah.
Okay, a lot of people in New Orleans wanted them to take the monument argument to a vote.
Right. And so it wasn't just, and I don't think that people are opposing the name changes on the city streets just because they're afraid of the whole whitewashing history thing, which I think is pretty important. But the other thing about it is the cost of having to change addresses as well. I mean, you talk about the cost of changing the street names, like you mentioned, that's almost $6 million. That's very useful money that, in my opinion, is being wasted. And I think people see that. But also the personal hassle for them as well, that they've got to get the address. I mean, it's amazing. For the
residents.
For the residents, exactly,
about,
yes. It's amazing until you realize, and it's called attention to it, how much of a hassle it would be for them to have to change their addresses because of the street's name changing. Yes. They'd have to change their address on so many different forms of identification.
Yeah, that's a good point. I unfortunately don't think that is going to be a very driving cause with this. And I believe that there may be a way for Austin's council to find a way to make these changes without going to a vote. And so that's what concerns me. And I don't know the bylaws of the Austin city.
Well, I can tell you this. Basically, it would likely require an election because Austin would have to be struck from the city charter and replaced. So because you're dealing with that city charter, it's most likely. Now, what you said, I'm sure they're looking for a way to behind the scenes be able to do it. And if they figure it out, and all it is being able to get in a lawyer that may be able to interpret it a certain way.
That's exactly right. If they can get legal representation
and a judge to back that up.
That's right. And well, like I just said, it's a very liberal city, and so there may be a way. And if there is a way, they're going to find a way. And the citizens there may not have any vote whatsoever. They may not have any opinion. Right. This is unfortunately something that is going to, we've talked about the monuments being taken down in many cities. New Orleans got the most press because they had the most monuments. Right. And they were the first to start taking them out one at a time. Okay, they took a bunch of them out. And I still believe that in the future of New Orleans, you're going to have some issues with changing the names of the streets. But I think that if Austin does this as a big group, a bundle of changes all in one, we may see this more and more in other cities.
And for those people that are wondering, and we're about to go to the phone lines as well, for those people that are wondering, hey, well, who's Austin named after? Well, it's Stephen F. Austin, known as the father of Texas and, of course, the namesake of the state's capital. He was very instrumental in carving out those early outlines of Texas and among, many of the things he accomplished. But because he opposed an attempt by Mexico to ban slavery in the province of what was then called Tejas, instead of slaves were freed, they would turn into, quote, vagabonds, a nuisance, and a menace. That's what's coming up now, and that's why you have this movement behind changing the name of the city.
Yeah, that's right. He wanted slave owners to be compensated if their slaves were emancipated. And so he has a lot of baggage there. All right. But you can't change history. And so I don't think that changing these names is going to change what happened.
Yeah.
And I would make at least the statement to people that are supportive of making these changes that, I could see them making an argument to keep it the same way so people don't forget what happened.
Right. And I'll say this, man, as we get ready to go to the phone lines, I don't agree with slavery at all. I think it was an awful thing that was done. But let me say this. To be able to just change the name of a city that was named after its founder, to go back and start changing that kind of influence. I mean, without that person, yes. This city does not grow into what it's become. Yes. I think it's incredibly. Look, there are things that I do that not everybody agrees with. There are things that you do that not everybody agrees with.
Oh, I don't believe that.
Sorry. Yeah.
No, I hear you.
You know what I'm saying.
No, I do hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
And I think that this is very dangerous in a way that if you start seeing this more and more often, listen, a lot of our founding fathers owned slaves. Mm-hmm. Okay, so what are you going to do? I mean, they are represented all over the country in many, many ways. Yeah. And so if you start doing this and it becomes the standard, then it's going to get traction. It's going to gain traction nationwide. And then think about Thomas Jefferson. Mm-hmm. All right. Think about where Thomas Jefferson is represented all over our nation.
Yes.
And so if you're going to change, my point is that if you apply that same argument, if you agree with that argument that they should change the name of Austin, then you can apply that same argument across all of our nation in many, many places.
232-1542, the Cajun Harley hotline looks like it's about ready to explode, so let's go ahead and head to it. All right, caller, you're on the air. Go ahead.
Hey, how you guys doing?
Good.
Look, I saw, and actually let me finish what I'm saying first. But I saw this on Fox. They had a report on this. I don't know if it was last night, the night before. And they talked about it, and they said it's overwhelmingly opposed not only by the citizens, but even a lot of the politicians, Republican or Democrat, in there. And it's just a small minority wanting to do this, and this is not likely to happen. I know you got one person, and I know there's a lot of fear and everything, but I seriously doubt this is going to happen because there's a lot of things that would be against this. The University of Texas, first of all, would be against that. I know that's a move and it's a Hail Mary at that, but I seriously doubt that they are going to change the name, of the city of Austin. I know there's that small minority and everything, but I'm just that's what I'm saying. That's what I there were some very knowledgeable people, both conservative or liberal, that were against this.
Yeah, you very well may be right. I think that initially you are right, but I unfortunately. I wouldn't say fear. It's not like I'm scared of this happening, but I am concerned that eventually this could happen maybe not necessarily in Austin but in another very liberal city. Thank you for the call. No, go ahead.
Yeah. No, I think you make a good point. I agree with you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. All right, 232-1542. Let's get one more in before we have to go to the break. All right, caller, you are up. Go ahead.
Yes, I'm on there.
Yes, sir.
Yes, I just want to give you my thought on all this, and I enjoy y'all's show, by the way.
Thank you.
I think as far as a society, in order to progress and move forward, you have to know where you come from. Mm-hmm. And taking down all these monuments and renaming streets is going to whitewash everything, and people are going to forget. You have to know where you come from so you can progress.
The good, do better. Yeah. The good and the bad.
That's right. And that's all I got to say. I
said a lot.
My 2 cents in there, and I mean, that's what I believe. That's what I try to instill in my family. And, my daughter lives in New Orleans, and they have all these street signs, Robert E. Lee Boulevard.
Oh, yeah.
It is what it is.
It is what it is. That's right. Thanks for the call.
Thank you, sir. All right. Now, look, if you're looking for a company that does a great job with embroidery work, you need something engraved, you need some signs and decals. Well, look, look no further than Trinity Graphics, located at 2010 Ambassador next to Tobacco Plus. They are a family-owned and operated printing company.
That's right. Trinity Graphics is all about the customer experience. They leave no stone unturned and will work with you to make sure the finished product is exactly what you imagined. Trinity Graphics can do everything you need to promote your business. So contact Trinity Graphics at 408-3644 or trinitygraphics.com, and that's graphics spelled with an X.
As a matter of fact, tell them you heard about them here on Offsides. We'll take this quick commercial break, jump back into the phone lines for a great discussion about what's happening in Austin. You're listening to Offsides, Brandon and Shannon, News Talk 96.5 KPL. Back into Offsides, 232-1542, as we talk about Austin, Texas, and considering changing its own name amid concerns about Confederate monuments, and also looking at changing the names of several streets within the city. We've got a caller on the line who's ready to jump into the conversation. You're on the Cajun Harley Hotline. Caller, go ahead.
This is like original sin. I am not guilty for the sins of my father. I mean, you know, I had ancestors that fought in the Civil War on the Confederate side. What does that make me a bad person? Does that make me guilty of what they went to war for? This is ridiculous. It's history. Get over it.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. Unfortunately, there's some wacky people that think that your ancestors were at fault, and so therefore you should be held responsible, at least in some ways. Now, none
of us will pass a purity test. None of us were human. We're fallible.
Yeah, listen, there's baggage. There's baggage everywhere. There's baggage in every country and nation's history. You know, people do bad things, and our nation is not exempt from that. We have got some baggage with our history, but doing things like this, changing the names of cities, taking down monuments, changing the names of schools or neighborhoods or city streets doesn't justify any type of payback. To me, this sounds like some type of payback that they want. And the only way that they can get it is to change the names and say, listen, these individuals do not deserve the recognition of having a city, a street, or a neighborhood named after them.
Even though without them, you wouldn't have that city and that street.
That's exactly right. Just like our founding fathers, a lot of them owned slaves. Many of them fathered children with slaves. But we can't just look at the sins that they committed. We need to look at the good that they did, because if not for them, we wouldn't be able to have this argument or this conversation at all.
George Orwell is coming back to life, and he sounds like he's in the liberals' heads. This is the Ministry of Truth trying to wipe the slate clean.
Yeah.
It'll never end. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, 232-1542. All right, caller, you're up next. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's trying to scrub history. Those who don't remember their history are destined to repeat it. Mm-hmm. And I've come to the conclusion that these liberals, there's something mentally wrong with these people. They don't take into account, they think they can create a utopia where everything is equal, everybody gets the same amount, but they don't take in the human condition that nobody's going to put out the same amount. So what? You're going to have these people that are slackers that are getting just as much as everybody else?
Yes, that's what they want. That's what they want. They want a living wage, and they want fairness across the board, and that's what they consider to be fair. They want no identity in any way, good or bad, and that is a very dangerous position to be in. And for them to promote that, and for anybody to recognize it as any reasonable position to be, I think that that's where the insanity applies.
Well, and fairness. By golly, until you've lived life, when you're young and dumb, you can think that things are going to be fair. But once you start living life and being out in the real world, you realize there's nothing fair out here.
Yeah.
And
I think you made a good point. And when you're young, it's easy to want a fair world. It's easy to be liberal when you're young. And these adults that want this fair world, they just haven't grown up yet.
No, and they're doing a disservice to the young people by putting this Bravo Sierra into their heads.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, 232-1542. Caller, you're up. Go ahead.
Well, if you go online, you'll see that Austin, Texas is the mecca for atheists, the atheist movement. In fact, they have a radio show that's broadcast out of Austin called The Atheist Experience. And when atheists are concerned, atheists are usually very liberal because they have no moral compass. So I just thought y'all might want to, little tidbit there.
All right.
Well, yeah, good point. I didn't realize that atheists
love
atheists. Atheists love Austin. Yeah, that'd be a good T-shirt for them.
Thank you, caller. All right, 232-1542. You're up next, caller. Go ahead.
Yeah, I have a son and his family that live in Austin. My wife and I visit often, and Austin is a beautiful town. I mean, the people are great. The economy is great. A couple of years ago, Austin sponsors a PGA tournament every year, the Dell PGA Championship. And they interviewed the mayor of Austin on one of these tournaments a couple of years ago, and he actually said, "Come visit us. Come visit us in Austin, but please don't stay because our population is booming." I guess my point is they're doing something right over there.
They're doing a lot right. I have relatives that live in Austin. I've got in-laws that live there. And you're right. It's a beautiful city. The economy is booming. You cannot – I'll tell you one thing I learned about Austin is that all the neighborhood developments there all require park space. And I don't mean like a little park with a swing. All right, these are nice, beautiful parks, and it is required for developers and builders that go in. They acquire big chunks of land, and they develop neighborhoods. And they started this decades ago because they have very established neighborhoods. They all have parks, very beautiful parks. And so my in-laws have been trying to convince us to live there, to move there, because they love it so much, and they are from this area. I have no interest in going for a lot of reasons, but nevertheless, you're right. Austin is a wonderful city to go to.
And I guess my point is, if it's not broken, don't fix it.
There you go.
Good point.
Thank you, sir. All right, 232-1542. Caller, you're up. Go ahead.
Yes, the caller that spoke on his ancestors, it's not that we fault the people of today behind the ancestors, but they are reaping financial benefit behind slavery that their ancestors set up for the generations that's living today. And plus, why should we have to see symbols of our race that's been raped, beat, and killed and separated and still walk around here looking at symbols from that time in history? No, we're not trying to replace history, but we don't need to be faced with history, which was a bad history in America.
Okay, well, listen, it's great to hear from you because we always like to get both sides of the conversation, okay? But I would at least ask you, okay, you're right that there are many people now, many families that have benefited from their ancestors, and their ancestors built great wealth because they had companies and they were able to run those companies very affordably because they owned slaves. Okay, but what are we to do about that? Now that their ancestors may be benefiting from them, these people that live now can't be expected to pay a price for what their ancestors did.
We're not asking them to pay the price. All we're saying is we should not have to face symbols of what happened 200 years ago.
So let me ask you this, and I say this respectfully because I hear the anger in your voice, and I can understand where you're coming from in it. Let me ask you this: where does it stop? If you take the symbols down, those historical symbols, then you have to go towards the streets where you change the names of streets, and then you change the name of figures such as Stephen F. Austin, the city being called Austin. When does it end? I mean, when does it get to the point where taking down a certain amount of symbols is not going to offend you or offend someone that believes the same way that you do? And I ask that respectfully. I really do.
I mean, yes, it was named after Stephen F. Austin, but, as far as that, no, that's taking it too far. But like the symbols, yeah, that we have to see. A street name, anybody named Austin,
Right.
Yeah.
I'm not with that.
So you're more supportive of taking down the monuments and not necessarily changing the name of the city.
Right.
Okay.
And you see, I can understand him
I
on
got
that.
that. Okay. I can understand
it.
that completely because a monument does celebrate. Okay. You can take the position that a monument does celebrate a individual, and so that's different. However, but naming a city after them, that also celebrates that person, doesn't it?
But the city was named years and years ago. That'd be too much.
All right.
Be too much.
All right.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate you calling.
Close the door.
All right, 232-1542. We're going to go ahead and take this quick commercial break. When we come back, more of your thoughts here on Offsides.
Welcome back to Offsides, everybody. We're talking about Austin, the city of Austin, Texas, considering changing the name of the city because of the founding. The city was named after somebody that was pro-slavery. And so we've got a lot of calls. We recently had a really good, interesting call before the break. Gentleman who did not necessarily support the changing of the name of the city, but he did support taking down the monuments.
Yes.
And he believes that that was a reminder of these people that not necessarily reflect a very good part of our history.
Right.
I think that is also got some danger to it because if you start taking them down, which they already have, or you can apply that argument or that same situation to so many different places. I was mentioning to Brandon during the break, well, what about Stone Mountain? Okay, Stone Mountain is in Georgia, and it is carved into the mountain. I've seen this, okay? Yeah. It's incredible. And on that mountain, you've got General Robert E. Lee, Stonewall Jackson, and Jefferson Davis. Now, these are all people that have controversial monuments that have been taken down in other places. So if you're going to take them down there, you necessarily have to take them down everywhere? And that's where I think it's very risky. We were talking about Thomas Jefferson during the break. You know, Thomas Jefferson owned and was obviously pro-slavery. Well, what about the Jefferson Memorial in D.C.?
Yeah, and look, as two guys that are obviously not, African American, to say that we can't, to say that we would go in and try to feel how they feel when they see a monument, we can't do that. And for that guy expressing his thoughts about it, I can understand why he's upset about it. Now, again, do I agree with monuments being taken down and street names being changed? No, I don't, because I don't think it really changes anything. But I can't, fault somebody who feels differently about it, and especially who feels the anger that I heard in his voice about it. I can't fault him for that.
He's not happy.
No, he's not happy at all. 232-1542. All right, we go to the Cajun Harley hotline. Caller, you're up. Go ahead.
Yes, this is Don from Opelousas.
Hey, Don.
Hey, Don.
Hey, I just wanted to make people realize that people of color, of all colors, and all countries have all been enslaved at one point in time.
That's a good
point. The Jewish, the African Americans, the American Indians, the Spanish, everybody. And I also would like to make the point that if they realize that a lot of black people own slaves too, and they also sold their own people into slavery.
Yeah.
Now, how are we totally responsible for this? We're not.
Well, I don't think, at least speaking for what I heard from the previous caller, I don't necessarily think that he is wanting to hold us responsible. But his position is that a lot of people from our history should not necessarily be celebrated by having a memorial or a statue. And so, I guess it just depends on what your history is and what your race is and what you've been exposed to. But I think that it's very risky when you start making these changes, because if you make one thing leads to another.
It is.
Okay. And you're absolutely right. There are a lot of different cultures that have taken advantage of of slavery. And one of the things that I don't necessarily frustrates me, but I find very curious is that a lot of the people that spend a lot of energy and time with these battles, taking down the monuments, changing names, I believe that their energy should be focused more on the slavery that still exists today. Yeah. Okay, yes, slavery existed here a long time ago, but what about the slavery that still exists today?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, Don, we appreciate it. 232-1542. Caller, you're up. Go ahead.
Guys, look, I'm afraid that if this passes, then there will be no end to it. And where is it going to end? You're going to remove the dollar bills, or you're going to take that out of the equation?
I think that's what they want.
Right. We can't hold somebody because of their skin color or anything else. Because what we're going to do? Blame everybody in Germany for what happened over there in Auschwitz or anyplace else?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, that's a good point. Thanks for the call.
Thank you, sir. All right, 232-1542. Caller, you're up. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think I kind of agree. I didn't hear all of the last guy's comments, but one thing, a lot of people don't look at history that close, and I'm not a real historian, but like General Robert E. Lee, he fought for the South because his country was Virginia. Mm-hmm. And at the time, all the states were individual countries, and he couldn't go against his home country.
Right.
But the man was also very anti-slavery, and he never owned slaves until he inherited slaves, and then he actually set them free because he didn't believe in slavery.
Mm-hmm.
But, sometimes people don't, he did pick the wrong side, but
well, that's the thing.
Look at the man himself.
He led the wrong side.
That's
too,
right.
Yeah.
He led the wrong side. He wasn't just a soldier.
Yeah.
Okay. He was the boss. And so, although you make some very good points, I think that it's going to be hard to convince people that are supporting these changes to change their mind, because he did, in fact, fight for the Confederacy, and he was the boss.
Right. But Abraham Lincoln also made all the Confederate soldiers United States veterans, and welcomed them back in to the Army and said, we're not going to have any malice, with malice towards none.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think that was what was needed to try to unify the country, even though there were obviously things that happened afterwards that were anything but unifying. But at least it was an effort put out there. And that's the thing, unfortunately, about all this that bothers me the most, is that what it's doing is it stirs people up, and it puts a divide between us. It gets people pitted against each other and arguing with each other. And some people who may not really, you mentioned how some people don't know their history. Some people who may not have even known who that statue was or what that person stood for, well, someone comes in, wants the statue removed, tells them what they believe that person stood for, gives them a bunch of negative things about him, and then all of a sudden you got that person riled up against them.
Yeah.
And when otherwise they wouldn't have even thought, getting given 2 seconds of thought to that statue.
Yeah. However, okay, if that person did have a checkered past,
right,
it is beneficial for today's youth, I guess, is a good way to apply that, because they may not know the real history.
Right.
You got to know the good and bad.
You do.
Okay, because if you don't know the good and bad, well, then you're destined for these kind of things to happen again. And so, I see your point. I don't disagree with you, but when you look at the bigger picture, sometimes maybe it's good for them to learn what they don't know about some of these individuals.
Oh, no, I agree with that completely. Yeah. I go back to, there was a monument that was in New Orleans. It wasn't one of the ones taken down. And thank you, caller. It addressed the Civil War time period. And I was having a conversation with someone who was black and someone who was of another race. And we just all three had a conversation about it. And there were no hard feelings. It was just a conversation about history, learning about it together from both what was on the monument itself, the little history blurb, to us talking about what we learned growing up in school. And it made for a great conversation.
Sure.
And there was no bad feelings between us. And I'm not saying that we were in unity, but we weren't divided against each other and arguing.
Right.
And it made for a great learning
And that's what
moment.
I'm talking about, because you all likely learned something from the other people that you weren't exposed to before.
Exactly.
Even if it wasn't necessarily hard data history, you learned about opinions from the other side, from different cultures that expose you to a completely different vision of what you originally had.
Right.
And so, taking these things down eliminates those kind of conversations, and therefore eliminates people to learn what they are expressing that they want us to learn.
232-1542. We head back to the Cajun Harley Hotline. Caller, you're up next. Go ahead.
Yes, your caller, a few callers back, said he was for removing monuments, but not for changing the name, because he also said that he didn't want to change the name because that happened such a while back. Well, so did slavery. It happened such a while back. I mean, why change the street names and not the city? I just don't understand. Any history, good or bad, is still history.
Yeah, that's right. I think that his opinion, and I'm not saying that I'm with or against him. Okay, I think that his opinion was that we have some baggage in our history, and some of the history of our nation is bad. And if we have symbols that celebrate the bad parts of it, then that is not a good thing. I don't think. Yeah,
and I understand it.
I don't think they should have taken down any of the monuments.
No,
I don't think they should take down the monuments in New Orleans. I don't think they should change anything. However, I can support the people that want it taken down, at least to the point where let's make sure that everybody knows the whole truth about our history. Because, I mean, I grew up in New Orleans, and I remember seeing these statues and these monuments, and I thought that they were really cool as a child, and I was like, wow, look at that. But it wasn't until I grew older that I realized that some of these guys, some of these monuments represented some things that weren't necessarily the shining stars of our history.
And, I mean, there is a difference between a street name and someone riding triumphantly on, in the form of a statue.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Where they're triumphant looking and you know what they stood for. I get the difference. I don't, and especially because I love history. For me, okay, if the city wants to vote, and this wasn't the city in New Orleans that did this, if the city wanted to vote to remove the statues, at least do something respectful with it instead of basically throwing it to the side the way that they've done with some of these statues
agree with that.
already.
I mean, they're just
Put it in its proper historical context.
I agree. Now, they are just sitting in a warehouse somewhere, and the warehouse is the location of the warehouse is private. Or they're not letting the public know. I can see them taking it out of the public and putting it someplace significant. I always thought that they should be put in the Chalmette battlefield, as I've told you before.
They're literally trashing history in New Orleans with the way that they did that.
Yep.
All right, 232-1542. Let's go ahead and take a quick break. Caller, we'll have you coming up right after this 3-minute timeout. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to Offsides, everybody. We're wrapping up today's segment. We've got a few more minutes, a lot of calls coming in. We're talking about the city of Austin potentially changing the name of the city because of the ties that it has to slavery. And so let's go to the phone lines.
All right, caller, you're on the Cajun Harley hotline. Go ahead.
Well, my thought is, like the statues, for instance, I think they ought to be put in a museum where they can still go and look at the history. But if you're going to take some down that, say, for the South, then you take them all down. Because I'm sure there was plenty of people that have statues in the North that won the Civil War that had slaveries too.
Oh, good point.
On another
that's
note,
true.
Lincoln had they called them servants. Lincoln had his servants there that served him. They weren't called slaves, but they could just roam anywhere they wanted to. And also, if we're talking about statues for a moment, there's statues of the president's heads on the Washington Mall, except for one. That was never a president. Now, to me, that don't belong. But that guy was a good guy, and he meant very well, and all the civil liberties and all that stuff. But, if we're going to do it, we're going to do it right all the way, or not at all, to me.
Yeah, well, that's the risk with all of this, because one thing does lead to another, and that could be exactly where we're going, because if you let it happen in one city, if they change their name, they change all the street signs, they take down all the monuments. Now, Austin is looking to do this as a big bundle. Let's do it all. New Orleans just took down the monuments. Austin's looking to take down the monuments, change city street names, change neighborhood names, and change the exact name of the city. So if that actually happens, then I think that is very risky because, as you just said, it's going to happen everywhere, or at least in many places.
Well, and look, here's the thing with some of the historical markers that basically relate to the Confederacy that are on city property there in Austin. The city would need to get approval from the Texas Historical Commission and the Travis County Historical Commission to move them, which is definitely a different way of going about it than what New Orleans had. You just had the city council voting in New Orleans.
Take them down.
You've got this situation where you've got people that value history that would have to approve that. I think it'd be a much tougher road to hope in Austin than it is in New Orleans.
Yes, I think that what might be the alternative that we might start seeing is that you might start seeing cities, instead of taking them down agreeing to relocate them. Okay, because that's different. Okay, because now we can maybe keep everybody happy. We're not going to take them down, but we're going to relocate them, and they're going to put them in a museum, or they're going to put them in on some private property or some designated area where people would have to travel to see them, as opposed to just traveling down the street.
But where does it end?
It doesn't end. Yeah, you're right.
That's the proverbial
question.
That's
the problem. It doesn't end.
Thank you, caller.
Thank you.
All right, 232-1542. You're up next, caller. Go ahead.
Hey, Brandon. Hey, Shannon. How you doing?
Hey, what's up?
Real simple. Just an opinion. I believe you can change the name of every state, every city, every street. I don't think that's going to change much. The change is going to come in people's hearts.
Mm-hmm.
To me, that's where it lies.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, sir. All right. 232-1542. Caller, you're on the Cajun Harley hotline. Go ahead.
Hey, guys, my man Vicky told me to call in to tell y'all that none of this would have ever happened, and it wasn't that bad until Barack Obama came into office, and then everybody became racist again.
Well, I tell you what.
Bobby makes a lot of sense.
Bobby Boucher, thanks for making that point. Because as I mentioned before, I grew up in New Orleans. Brandon's been on the radio for a long time. I never heard any complaints about those monuments until President Obama was elected. Not one.
And that's why my man Vicky said they some stupid heads.
Some stupid heads.
Thank you, Mr. Boucher.
Thank you.
All right, 232-1542. Caller, you're up. Go ahead.
Hey, hello?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You're on.
Hey, has anybody brought up the relationship between, like, the Taliban and what they did in Iraq?
Oh, removing all the monuments and such? Yeah.
Yeah, well, what they did was they ended up actually blowing them up and getting rid of them, the opposing religion and opposing parties. Mm-hmm. And then they basically, I'm looking at it in the extreme with that situation, revising history, et cetera. And I kind of view what's happening with the statues in a similar kind of light. So I don't know.
Oh, yeah. All right. Thank you.
232-1542. Got time for at least one more call. You're on the air, caller. Go ahead.
Hey, guys. I'll tell you where it's going to end. The people that are pushing this, they want it ending with the Constitution being declared a racist document created by slave owners, and they want it gone. And that's where this is going, and that's where it's going to end. That's what they want the end to be.
I can't disagree with that.
I agree completely.
I'm just, it's out there, the people that are funding this and pushing it, and the way they're going with it. That's where they want it to end at. So
I think there's unfortunately, thank you, caller, people that don't realize that their emotions are being stirred up because of by way of ulterior motives. Mm-hmm. I think it's very unfortunate that people being played against each other because you have other people behind the scenes that are really trying to get a certain objective completed. All right, we're going to go ahead and take this quick, not say quick, we'll go ahead and take
22-hour break.
22-hour break. Coming up, you've got Fox News at the top of the hour, also the Mark Levin Show as well. We'll be back tomorrow. Until then, have a great one.